Okay, we are now head pressing Rich Deacon, author of Keep It Together for Head Press. I've got a couple of questions, and to be very annoying, I've got 19 in fact, as opposed to 20. One thing I'd like to ask you first of all is, how did you discover the Pink Fairies and the Deviants, and what age were you when you first discovered them?
Right, this is a bit of a cop-out sort of answer really, but I could say I discovered them when I was 7 or 8 years old, but I only really discovered the album cover of What a Bunch of Sweeties, which was their second album. So I never really got into the music till a lot of years later, many years later. We had an older cousin, my sister was older than me, and we used to go occasionally visit my cousin, say once a month. And, they used to get their records out, and there used to be all these really nice record covers with things like Led Zeppelin first out with the Burning Zeppelin on the cover. And they always used to have really nice covers. I was more interested in the covers than I was sort of the music. So then one day I found this Pink Fairies one with this big gatefold sleeve with artwork by Edward Barker. It was a really nice, colourful cartoon, and it was, I mean, obviously I didn't really sort of understand what the meaning was behind all this sort of fruit they found, which was obviously drug sort of mythology, but it was great. I just loved the cartoon and the front cover. So that's really how I got into them, and it wasn't until probably, I don't know, a few years later when I was into sort of punk that I started finding out sort of more about the actual meaning of the Pink Fairies. So.
Cool. And also, what are your favourite tracks, would you say, of either the Pink Fairies or the Deviants?
I mean, it varies, because I mean there's always different moods, what you're feeling like at the time, but I'd say I like again What a Bunch of Sweeties album, which not a lot of people rate or mention a lot of the time, is Right On Fight On. Really underrated track. Uncle Harry's Last Freak Out always goes without saying. Portobello's Shuffle Off. What a Bunch of Sweeties as well. So it sounded like I really like What a Bunch of Sweeties, but it isn't just that. I mean, I do like, there's a good mix across all three albums really by the Pink Fairies. Deviant stuff, again, that varies. Deviant's first album's very experimental, and I have to be really in the right mood to sort of say which tracks I like off that. But I mean, Deviation Street's good off that. Yeah, there's good things off all of them. There's also some crap as well.
Why do you think Notting Hill was such a focal point, and with regards to obviously the Pink Fairies and Deviants music, and also the whole like kind of counterculture scene in the 60s?
Well, I mean, obviously I didn't live here, I never grew up around here and all, but I mean, I think historically Notting Hill has always been this sort of area of there was a large immigrant population after it was originally built, and Bohemian sort of population. So the fact that 1948, when a lot of immigrants came over from the West Indies, etc., and they were sort of either Irish, whatever, but then writers, etc., in the sort of 50s and 60s, Colin McInnes, obviously, with Absolute Beginners and things, it perhaps a natural progression that sort of the hippies would sort of settle in an area like that, was sort of becoming a bohemian sort of enclave. You know, that's really perhaps all I can say about that.
Sure. I mean, I know that we discussed like when you first discovered their music, but at what point did you decide that you wanted to write about their music?
Well, to write about it, the reason I decided to write about it was only probably about 4 years ago. Funnily enough, my girlfriend was really ill at the time, and I knew we weren't going to be going out for a long while, and we were possibly going to have to stay in. And I just read a book by a guy who wasn't sort of a professional author or anything. I think he was just a sort of a fan of Hawkwind, and he'd written a book on Hawkwind. I thought, well, if he can do that, then maybe I can do something on the Pink Fairies, which is also a similar scene. Hawkwind was Ladbroke Grove, Notting Hill scene, and I decided to write about it then. But I mean, going back, say back to when I said about I was into sort of punk and sort of like the late 70s, early 80s, and I just started discovering about the Pink Fairies and the Ladbroke Grove scene. I mean, that's sort of the whole thing about this counterculture resistance thing sort of always fascinated me from then, but I never had the idea about writing about it then. But having said that, I did do an MA on the British Underground Press, which is also largely based around Ladbroke Grove and the Notting Hill scene as well. I mean, that came into it quite heavily. So.
Wow, yeah, so how long did it actually take you to complete?
It took me probably from, I decided to write it in about September 2004, I think. So from September 2004 to December 2006. I mean, then obviously after I finished the writing then, that was largely finished, everything then, yeah.
Cool.
So it was intense, very intense. A lot of interviews with people, and so it was just full on for that two and a bit years.
And how come you decided to target head press for your new book?
Well, they had a lot of left field titles in their sort of repertoire, and there was Lovers, Buggers and Thieves, things like that, and I just thought they might be interested in any sort of Pink Fairies, that sort of thing. I mean, I've got to say, I also sort of sent it around to various other publishers as well. The head press got back to me, and yeah, and it went from there.
Okay. And how easy or how difficult was it to make contact with the people that helped you to write the book, the contributors?
Yeah, it was really, because I already had contact with Nick Farron.
Right.
I was already in touch, when I said about the MA I did, I was already in contact with Nick Farron, and he sort of obviously, I got on quite well with him for a few years, so he was able to provide a few contacts for me in the first place. And once I sort of met Boss Goodman, who was the sort of Pink Fairies main road manager and Deviants road manager for a number of years, and I sort of became quite friendly with him, and we had a sort of real good time. We became quite friendly, and then once sort of people knew that he was sort of recommending me and sort of saying, yeah, it sort of just snowballed, and it went on from that. So at times it was hard. I mean, at times I'd hit a brick wall, but most of the time it was really helpful. So people were helpful.
And I guess because of the kinds of people that they were quite, amicable towards wanting to, get their story out there to a point.
Not always, no, because I mean, I suppose there's a lot of, sort of tales that they had a reputation for doing a lot of things in the past that they might not want to sort of do now, and so it wasn't always easy to elicit information like that. But by and large, everyone was pretty good, and and I got in touch with most of the main characters and the main people involved, and they were all very helpful.
What's your favourite and craziest story?
I wouldn't be able to tell you that, I'm afraid, because that would be betraying the trust.
Okay, that's fair enough.
You might need to get me another bottle in a minute, Trish.
Yeah.